These glasses are embarrassing. Every year I get a new pair of glasses, and every year they look dumber and dumber. I cannot find a cool pair of glasses. All right, this video has nothing to do with my glasses. It has to do with knowledge transfer. So I guess it sort of relates to my glasses because I'm getting old. I graduated from my doc program 10 years ago. And I've been thinking a lot about the time I spent postgraduate learning about these different theories, right? I thought I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get my doctorate, and I'm going to learn about how people think, how the mind works, and I'll be able to use that expertise in my work as a therapist or in my work as a coach. But if I really reflect on what I learned and how I apply it today, the reality is that I don't think I apply much. I think I have a better idea of how to think about people, but I don't know that I'm actually applying theories regularly. What I'm really doing is learning from my clients. Every client that I have, I learn something, I take that piece of knowledge, and then for the next client, I apply it, right? And so there's this sort of evolution of the way I think about work, the way I think about emotions, the way, right? It's this sort of evolving process where I get more information about kind of how people show up in their lives. And so I had this idea of solidifying that knowledge in some way, tracking that knowledge in some way. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new segment here called Story Time. And on Story Time, I'm going to share an interaction that I had with a client and what I learned from it, whether that's a new way of thinking about something, a piece of advice that I offered, some insight I gained from the client. I just want to share sort of pivotal moments that I've had with clients. And I think, to me, it would be really interesting to be able to sort of track that growth of knowledge over time, and hopefully people find that interesting. So this is episode 1 of Story Time. I have a client that I met with today that runs a large segment in a business, and he is in coaching because he's gotten a lot of critical feedback from people saying his expectations are unreasonable. So we did a 360 on him, and one of the trends in the data was that he is pushing people to work too many hours and that he himself has a really poor work-life balance. So I was asking him, well, how many hours do you work? And he said, I work typically 70 or 80 hours a week. And he said it with pride, and he was using it to point out that, yes, these people think he's riding them too hard, but he's not expecting them to work 70 or 80 hours, so he's not asking them to do anything that he wouldn't do. And I think we had a really interesting discussion about the impact of that kind of behavior. He expects people to see him working those hours and be impressed by it and admire him, right? And to look up to him. And he wants organic followership because he is working so hard. But I think the impact is actually disengagement. I think the people that report up to this person are underwhelmed by it. They look at the work-life balance and they don't want it. And they think, if I have to work that hard, if I have to work in that way to be successful in this business, I don't want any part of it. So I think what happens is you run the risk when you work like that, you run the risk of destroying your succession pipeline because no one wants to operate in that way, especially this younger generation. Now, while I think everybody would go, hey, you got to dial it down a little bit and work fewer hours, this kind of leader, I can just tell you, is not going to respond well to that kind of feedback. So the feedback for him is, what can you do differently to make the hours you put in not feel so overbearing to other people? Like, so for example, stop sending emails on nights and weekends. Use a delayed delivery function so that your email comes in the morning. Stop calling people after hours. Stop dropping by people's offices right when they're leaving and asking them to engage in conversations. Stop being critical right when people get to work in the morning, right? You can structure your day a little bit so that you give people an easier transition into work and an easier transition out of work. You can prevent yourself from calling on them when they're not actually on the job, right? Just because you have poor boundaries doesn't mean that they need to have poor boundaries.